We have gone over how to factor a quadratic formula. Now we are going to go through, or how to solve. We've done solving. Now we're going to take it one step further and we're going to use the quadratic formula to factor. So let's go through what we've done before. With the quadratic formula, we know that this first one is going to be A, our second number is B, and our third number is C. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I'm going to substitute in my values. So I'm going to take and plug in negative 9 for b, 1 for a, negative 70 for c, and 1 for a again. When I simplify it, two negatives make a positive 9, plus or minus the square root. I enter in this section into my calculator, and we get 361 over 2, which equals 9, plus or minus the square root of 361 is 19. Which gives us 9 plus 19 over 2 and 9 minus 19 over 2. Simplify. 9 plus 19 is 28 divided by 2 equals 14. 9 minus 19 is negative 10 over 2, which equals a negative 5. These are the solutions. So the new step that we're doing is we are taking the solutions, x equals 14 and x equals negative 5, and we're going to factor them. So in order to factor, I need to move the 14 over with the x. So I'd have to minus it from both sides. We'd have x minus 14 equals 0. And then to move the 5 over, I would have to add it to both sides. So we get x plus 5 equals 0. These two are your factors, x minus 14, x plus 5. Let's try it again. So we have our quadratic equation. We have a, B, C. Notice I'm keeping the signs with them, with the number that's behind them. Then I plug them in. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Plug the values in. Negative 5, a, c all over 2a, which gives us two negatives, make a positive 5, plus or minus the square root of 1. When I enter this into the calculator, I get a 1 over 4, 5. Alright, so sorry, my video froze. So let's start back again. So we plugged in the values for our quadratic into the quadratic formula. Two negatives make a positive 5, plus or minus the square root. This piece became a 1 over 2 times 2 is 4. I rewrite 5 plus or minus the square root of 1 is just a 1 over 4. Separate them out because I have 5 plus 1 over 4 and 5 minus 1 over 4. Those are my two solutions, and simplify. 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 over 4 is 3 over 2 when I reduce it. 5 minus 1 is 4 over 4 equals 1. I rewrite my solutions over here, and now I'm going to try and factor them by moving all of the pieces over. Some of you will want to do minus 3 over 2, minus 3 over 2. But I don't want to do that in this case. In this case, I want to get rid of the denominator by multiplying by 2 so that it cancels out. Then I can minus 3 over, so 2x minus 3 equals 0. On this one, it's nice, there's no denominator, so I just minus the 1. And those are my two factors. So 2x minus 3 is 1, and then x minus 1 is my other factor. And we're done. All right, let's try it again. We have a, b, c, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Plug in the values and we get 6 and 6, 2 and negative 108, and over 2a. Simplified, negative 6 plus or minus the square root. When I enter this into the calculator, I'm going to get 900 over 2 times 2 is 4, which equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 900 is 30 over 4. Split them up. Negative 6 plus 30, negative 6 minus 30, which equals negative 6 plus 30 is 24 over 4, which is equal to 6. Negative 6 minus 30 is negative 36 over 4, which equals a negative 9. So my solutions are x equals 6 and x equals negative 9. In order to factor it, I'm going to move it over with the x. Which means my factors are x minus 6, x plus 9. Alright, in these cases, our quadratic was in standard form from the beginning. They equaled 0. On the next set, we have a situation where they are not all on the same side. So we need to go through and move this 11b over so that it's in standard form. So we would have negative 3b squared minus 11b plus 60 equals, those canceled out, 0. Notice I put them in order. B squared, b, and then there's no b at all. This is the a, b, c, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Plug our values in, and we get negative 11, negative 3, 60 over negative 3. Two negatives are going to make a positive 11 plus or minus the square root of, enter this into the calculator, and we get 841 over 2 times 3 is negative 6. Simplify that, we get 11 plus or minus 29 over negative 6. Then we're going to simplify 11 plus 29 over 6, 11 minus 29 over negative 6, which gives us 40 over negative 6, which reduces to 20 over negative 3. And then our next one reduces to negative 18 over negative 6. Negatives cancel out. 18 divided by 6 is 3. So we get x equals 20 divided by negative 3. X equals 3. To factor it, I want my solutions over with the x, so I'm going to multiply by negative 3 minus the 20 minus the 3 over, and there's our factors, negative 3x minus 2, x minus 3. factors from solutions. Our last one, I'm going to minus the 8 over. 5r squared minus 3r minus 8 equals 0. A, B, C. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Plug them in. Negative 3ac over 2a. Two negatives make it positive, plus or minus the square root of 169 over 10, which equals 3, plus or minus the square root of 169 is 13 over 10. 3 plus 13 over 10. 3 minus 13 over 10 equals 16 over 10, which is 8 over 5, which equals 6. Oops, that's a negative 13. Okay, so 3 minus 13 is negative 10. There we go. Over 10 is negative 1. So I have x equals 8 over 5. X equals negative 1. Move them over, so I'll multiply x by 5. And to move the 8 over, I have to subtract it. Same thing here. Move that 1 over, I have to add it. There are our factors. And these would be called our solutions when it says x equals. That is how you factor a quadratic using the quadratic formula.